Hi there, this is Charlie Bowen with the 1937 flood, and let's just say this from the start. The band that we have loved for nearly a half century now would not exist were it not for Dave Peyton. Everything about our band, its Appalachian roots, its sassy attitude, its willingness to wander pretty far afield in pursuit of the novel or the noble or, sometimes just the naughty, came to us over the decades through the creative genius of Brother Peyton. Frankly, we were in awe of Dave's special brand of alchemy that could take him from the fierce to the fun-loving and back again at the speed of a laugh and a wink, and all the rest of us made it our mission just to try to keep up.
How could life be so cold? Where did all the water go that my boat was floating on yesterday? Has my ship run aground, or have I finally found that the ocean I was on was just a bait? As I stand here on the shore, I can hear the ocean roar. The tide's gone out, I'm stranded on my own. Not in love, not in friend, but on God I can depend. You show me the light and safely lead me home. And I'll sing those old songs again. And I'll thank the Lord for every place I've been. And I'll start life anew some sweet day, singing praise the Lord, showing me the way. And I'll sing those old songs again. And I'll thank the Lord for every place I've been. And I'll start life anew some sweet day, singing praise the Lord, showing me the way. Singing praise the Lord, showing me the way.
And I'll sing those old songs again. If there was a continuing theme in Dave Peyton's message to us, it was that. No matter where our rambling took us, he didn't want us wandering too far away from the old songs, especially the songs he'd learned from the artists of his beloved West Virginia. Hazel Dickens and Billy Ed Wheeler, Roy Harvey, and most of all, Dave's favorite West Virginia singer, Aunt Jenny Wilson. Here's an Aunt Jenny song that Peyton turned into a flood standard.
But I told the bucket dead, and the last word you said was never let your woman have her way. Let the woman have her way, you're gonna run night and day. Never let your woman have her way. Like I love you, your place your little hand in mine, and wrap your arms around me, love, and be forever. Get it done. I know just how you feel. That silly green color dancing all the while.
Hey, one just stand over there after this. Do it again, give it to Sam.
Hey,
Hit it, Sam!
watch out. Hey, short fucking dead. That last word you said was don't put no shortening in my brain.
course, Dave didn't like a song just because it was old. In fact, he was rather famously not a fan of our state song here in West Virginia and much preferred Roy Harvey's rewrite. Well, let's let Dave tell it. This from a Flood concert in 2006.
Well, now we've got to get back to a West Virginia song here, and we're going to feature the dulcet tones of Mr. Dave Peyton.
Another love song.
Another love song. It's, I don't know, Dave, before he started to sing with us, sounded a whole lot like Andy Williams, but, well.
We ended that pretty
We
quick.
pretty much, yeah. And he still sounds a lot like Andy Williams, but pretty much the way he sounds now, I guess, you know. Tell him about this song here, Dave.
I don't think I will. Read this one. I don't think we've got the best state song in the world. West Virginia Hills is a pretty bad song. Some of you folks might like it. It sounds a little too much like a Salvation Army song to me. But was a fellow, I can't remember his last name, Charlie. What's his name? Roy something? No.
Rogers.
Well, anyway,
Make up someday.
he lived down in Mercer County, in that area, Bluefield, the Hinton, that area down in there. And he, in the 20s, 30s, and he listened to our state song too and thought, well, I can do better than that, but I'm going to have to change it somewhat. So he turned a song called The West Virginia Hills to a song called Moonshine in those West Virginia Hills. Roy what? Harvey. Roy Harvey. This is his name, Harvey. And I'll sing a little bit of our state song first to kind of ease into it because it may be too much if I just started singing it outright. Oh, those hills, beautiful hills, how I love those West Virginia hills. Boys, if you ain't right, get right.
Well, bright lights on Broadway and sunshine down in Dixie. We got moonshine in those West Virginia hills. In those West Virginia mountains, we got rain from the mountains. And on every little hill, we have a stick. Well, bright lights on Broadway and sunshine down in Dixie. We got moonshine in those West Virginia hills. Oh, those hills, beautiful hills. We got moonshine in those West Virginia hills. Well, the bright lights on Broadway and the sunshine down to Dixie. We got moonshine in those West Virginia hills. Get it, dude. Well, the big policeman's busy running around in his Tin Lizzie, and of course he's got a mission to fulfill. We all listen and remember 100 years from last November, we'll have moonshine in those West Virginia hills. Oh, those hills, beautiful hills. We got moonshine in those West Virginia hills. There's the bright lights on Broadway and the sunshine down in Dixie. We got moonshine in old West Virginia. Get it done. Folks went crazy over the election, but of course they need perfection for all denominations to fulfill. Since Hoover's been elected, moonshine will not be protected. We'll have moonshine in all the West Virginia hills. Oh, those hills, beautiful hills. We got moonshine in all the West Virginia hills. With the white lights on Broadway and the sunshine down in Dixie. We got moonshine in all the West Virginia. Turn it loose, singer. hills, like those hills. We got moonshine on West Virginia hills. And white lights on Broadway and sunshine down in Dixie. We got moonshine on West Virginia hills. My soul.
Like most of us in the flood, David started picking during what we used to lovingly call the great folk music scare of the 1960s. But unlike most of us, Peyton didn't gravitate toward the guitar. He looked around the room at those parties in the mid-60s and decided the world had more than enough guitar players, so he decided to go in a different direction. Here's a snippet of a 2002 flood visit to Joe Dobbs' Music from the Mountains show on West Virginia Public Radio, in which Dave remembers his musical beginnings.
And let me talk to Dave Peyton a minute. Dave plays the autoharp. Tell us a little bit about how you got started playing, Dave, because there are not a lot of autoharp players out there, and most people who play autoharp play guitar or play other instruments.
I play
but
nothing,
you play the
nothing
autoharp.
with the autoharp.
Well, the kazoo.
I don't like any, and the kazoo.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when I was in college, I really fell in love with Mother Maybelle Carter. I mean, truly, I would like to be, when I die, I'd like to be buried next to Mother Maybelle. And it was about that time that Mother Maybelle had switched from the guitar to the autoharp. If you remember, she
performing with her daughters, right?
Yeah, performing with her daughters. And I was listening to this wonderful, wonderful instrument, and I didn't know exactly what it was. I went down to a music store and saw one and thought, well, this is something interesting nobody else plays. And so I got it thinking that I could, first of all, because of the chord bars on, everybody thinks they can play it. Well, you just pick it up and play it. Well, about 5 years later, after really trying to learn, I had no teachers. There was nobody in this region that knew how to play the autoharp. I just listened to Mother Maybelle on the records.
Did you get books that had chords written above the song?
Yeah, eventually I did, but mostly I learned 3 chords at first.
There was no guitar players in your family?
No, very little music. But the most music that I was my father listened to the Grand Ole Opry, but I mean there was nobody played any. Actually, my grandfather, who I never knew, played fiddle, and there's rumors that a great uncle played guitar. What I did was I learned how to play the autoharp by listening to Mother Maybelle, not ever seeing anybody play one, and then when I went out to join other people who played music, I had to learn to develop a style that I could be heard with a band and play very fast. So that's how I developed my style.
About that unusual style, here's Peyton explaining his technique to host Brad Becker during the Flood's 2009 appearance on the Lexington, Kentucky radio show Red Barn Radio.
And Mother Maybelle picked it up in the late 50s and early 60s, I guess. So I started playing the autoharp not very long after Mother Maybelle did. And she got famous, and here I am.
Yeah. Well, Dave also plays this thing, and he backstrums it. He puts those picks on so hard that the blood is cut off, and it's really sort of scary to watch. We were playing somewhere, and this guy came up, and he looked at Dave for a while, and then he said, "What'd he say, Dave?"
He said, you're playing that autoharp, looks like a duck flying backwards.
Is that with some intention, or did that just evolve?
Actually, I won't give my 2-hour lecture, but if you'll notice these picks, instead of being curved, they're more or less straight. I take these picks and make them rather straight, so that when I pick, I can go both ways. I go both ways. Most people just do that, but I can strum backwards too.
And here's a fine example of Dave's autoharp playing on an Aunt Jenny Wilson tune that he and I recorded in the early spring of 1975.
Well, it's Reuben sitting on 24th Street with another woman sitting on his knee. He whispered softly in her ear, "Darling, do you love me? Oh, I love my honey, God knows that I do. One thing I won't deny, I knew my Saturday night, Lord, I would it in a day, sure it would. If it had not have been for the doctor, oh Lord, I would be in my grave today. Coming on down, coming on down the line. It stole some other woman's husband and gone, but I know that it can't take mine. Baby, let me tell you my dream. My dream last night, I had a pocket full of money, and Lord, I was rolling in a big dice game. But when I woke, I found it all a joke, 'cause I didn't have 8 pesos to my name.
But of course, it was never just folk music with Peyton. He was equally eager to explore the wild and woolly party music of the 1920s and 30s, the jug band tunes and the hokum music that we all fell in love with. Here's one that we popped on an audience down at Harris Riverfront Park in the summer of 2002, when the Flood was invited to perform as the featured guests of the Huntington Symphony Orchestra. Wonderful memories that night.
It's an old jug band tune called Stealing'. A lot of people don't admit that they know this song, but I bet some people out there do. Kick it off.
And of course, crazy music like Steelin' required a substantial boost in our collective sassiness. And once again, Brother Peyton rose to the occasion, becoming our hoodoo guru of the kazoo, as he explains in this snippet with WSAZ-TV's Tim Ear.
As you can tell, there's more here than music. The Wednesday night jam sessions are also jammed with laughter, hot coffee, sweet treats, a lot of friendship, and last but not least, Dave Peyton and his mighty kazoo.
West Virginia saxophone.
Strangely enough, it seems as if the kazoo is more popular than the autoharp, which is a little bit of a downer, but that's okay.
But it's yours.
It's mine, the West Virginia saxophone.
Take it home, Sam.
What more can you ask for in life? Good friends, good food, good music.
My basic street.
Now that's the way it's supposed to be.
When we do that song and you're not here,
It's just not right.
it's just
Something's
not
just
right. If you're not right, get right.
I don't know. It's not the same.
It's just not
Miss
right.
me, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Will you miss me? Will you miss me when I'm
That's exactly the way Bob Dylan did it before he found that harmonica. He was walking around, traveling America with a kazoo on a coat hanger. And he couldn't figure out what was it. That's right, the voodoo.
Voodoo
Voodoo.
of the kazoo.
The voodoo guru of kazoo.
That's my new song. Can you follow me on it?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I can't stop laughing.
The Ride of the Valkyrie, man.
Hoodoo voodoo
Guru of kazoo.
of the kazoo. Okay.
Kick it off there, son.
Played Fred's Bar one time. And because it was raining, we were supposed to play outside, but
That was the story. They
Where that old mule
took one
was
look
at?
at us and said, "What you
and
play in a bar?"
I started playing the kazoo, and the horse and the mule went absolutely they thought it was a horsefly.
That mule.
That mule
started braying,
that was
didn't
so
it?
funny.
And the horse's ears went back, and oh my God, that's the biggest horsefly.
We listened to it for a while and said, we can work him in. Can we have that mule? We'll work on everything, but then neither did banjo. We tolerated the banjo for a long time.
Of course, we eventually learned that a kazoo in isolation will seek to proliferate and escalate. So before long, Peyton had expanded his jug band chops to include a fully outfitted washboard. Dave called it Wallace the washboard, and then we just laid in wait for our old buddy Floodster Emeritus Chuck Romine to swing by. Here was the result.
Now the moment many of you have been waiting for. Today. They're not laughing at you, Dave. They're laughing with you.
Do I have to sing now?
Yeah.
He played it on the boardwalk every day. Rubbing up in his little He played Charleston on the washboard for the boys. Why he could drag a thing like
Oh, yeah.
that enough?
Now, we know that many people who love Dave Peyton knew nothing about his music and his near half-century of fun with the flood. Instead, they knew Peyton, in any of a variety of different ways, as an award-winning syndicated columnist, or as a world-class gardener, as a commentator on West Virginia's politics and society, or as the author of computer-related books that sold literally hundreds of thousands of copies around the world. Most probably knew Dave Peyton as a tireless, heroic newspaperman who spent his career covering the lives and times of West Virginians, including from the front line of some of the biggest stories in the state's history, from the Marshall plane crash and the Silver Bridge collapse to Buffalo Creek. In a word, Dave was fearless in his reporting and in his columns, with no tolerance for corruption or hypocrisy or malfeasance. And, well, sometimes the contrast between Peyton's journalistic vocation and his musical avocation caused some interesting conversations at flood rehearsals. I remember Joe Dobbs used to joke that we should always read Peyton's column to see who might be upset, and then we could decide whether we needed to perform that night with bags over our heads. Here's a typical moment of chatter from a jam session.
They've still got a price on my head and crown. me and Lee.
Is that price going up or down, Dave?
I wrote a story about how the kids at Crown Elementary were eating out of garbage cans.
I think I'm going to take it.
That showed up in the Sunday paper one day, and suddenly I got a call. Says, "Is this that Dave Peyton writes for the newspaper?" And I said, "Yeah, that'd be me." He said, "I live in Crown. You know what I mean? I'm coming up there and whoop your ass right now."
I think that's the funniest thing that George Millot ever did, though. You remember George Millot? We were playing up at the library, and he snuck in. There was a big crowd over there. He stuck in and sat behind everybody, and then finally this voice comes up from behind the crowd and says, "Which one of them's Dave Peyton?" We all ducked.
Dave's heart could become so enraged by the abuses he witnessed in his native state, by corrupt politicians, by strip miners, by corporate crooks inside and outside our border. But the same big heart was soothed by the people he met. He loved West Virginia beyond all measure and treasured the music and the humor and the humanity of its citizens. In the last few years of his life, Peyton had to stop performing with the band after taking a bad fall that shattered his elbow and ended his playing. But he stayed in touch. For instance, when the flood started its next big thing, being the house band for a series of free monthly concerts called Route 60 Saturday Night, Dave came on board as the official storyteller, each month sharing some yarns about his favorite people, usually, of course, musicians. One of his very last public appearances was at the December 2017 edition of that Route 60 concert series. And wouldn't you know it, the person he wanted to talk about that night was Aunt Jenny Wilson, the same Logan County singer, banjo player who influenced so much of our music.
Tonight we've got another original I want to talk about, and her name is Jenny Wilson, Logan County. Lord, what a woman she was. I could probably talk about her for two or 3 hours, but I'll hold it down to an hour.
Now, did you meet Aunt Jenny before you started playing with the boys?
Probably so. I probably met her about 1970, and maybe a little earlier than that. She's from Logan County. She was Logan County. And I got to know her real well. She played a banjo. Not a banjo, she played the banjo. And her maiden name was Ellis. Those of you who know Logan County might know that about 90% of the Ellises of Logan County are either in jail or going to jail, one or the other. She escaped it somehow. Pretty close a few times she went to jail, but she didn't. She was born in 1900, and she had 5 older brothers, all of whom became deputies under Don Chafin, if that tells you anything. But her brothers told her that if she learned how to ride a horse and shoot a gun and play a banjo, that she could become a boy. And she said, that's pretty good, because she didn't like to be a girl. But it didn't work. She learned how to shoot a gun, and she learned how to ride a horse and play a banjo, but she never became a boy like she really wanted to. And she got pretty good at it. She became a sensation probably by about the age of 12, and was invited to her barn dance in a lodge hall at the age of 12 with this other group. She was there for square dancing. That was the first time she nearly died of fright, because she was holding the banjo, picking it, and of course in Logan County every dance ended in either began or ended in a fight, and this one included a gun. And she heard a pop and looked down, and there was a hole in her banjo head. Somebody had shot a hole through her banjo. And she said,
a little message or something?
Well, she said everybody in the place started going out the windows. She said they all went go out the windows like flying squirrels. And she said I decided to sneak out. She said I walked like Frankenstein out the door. And she said I looked for the boy who brought me, and I couldn't find him anywhere. He ran before she got out. And she said I got out the door, I was walking along, and said in the bushes, I heard him say, Jenny, are you shot? She said, I turned around and said, shut up, you know I am. She wasn't shot. She said, I assured her that night that I was never going to play a barn dance again. And then she said, the next day I started thinking about it. I said, that was pretty exciting. I think I'll do it again. She went on and probably didn't get married until she was about 17 or 18. She was an old maid by then in Logan County. She married a fellow who became a coal miner, and she had 2 or 3 kids, 2 or 3 children, until he died. He got wounded in a slate fall, and spent 3 or 4 months in bed before he died. It must have been horrible. But she said after he died, I never wanted to get married again. And of course, the coal companies back then were so kind that she didn't get anything. She got nothing for being hurt in the slate fall. So she had to take in washing and ironing for years and years and years to take care of her kids. But she did it. By God, she did it. Talking about those kind of things, she became. I don't know if you folks know much about mountain culture. But there are in West Virginia and in Appalachia, there are such things as matriarchs. Men didn't run everything. As a matter of fact, if you became a matriarch, you ran the place where you lived. And Aunt Jenny was a matriarch on Crooked Creek. She basically ran Crooked Creek in most of Logan County. She has a grandson, Roger Bryant, who plays the music, and. He and I are the only 2 people in the world who learned a song from her called Banks of the Old Guy, and it's on one of our CDs back there, if you want to hear it. And it's a story about one of her cousins in Ellis who was up for murder, typical for Ellis in Logan County. And she said he got up there and said, when it come time for him to speak, he got up and he sang the song Banks of the Old Guy and for the judge and the jury. And after he did that, said there were tears in the juror's eyes, and she said, of all the miracles in the world, he come clear. You know what come clear means? That means found not guilty. He come clear, which, she said, was a miracle for an Ellis.
Dave Peyton, our storyteller, thank you for sharing with us, giving us a little holiday cheer.
Yeah, talk about coming full circle. Some 40 years before that December night in 2017, Dave played that very song at a party in the south side of Huntington. For us, and for so many of Dave's fans, this is the quintessential Peyton song. Here is Dave, accompanied by Roger Samples on guitar and Banks of the Old Guyane.
Come on, my young companion, wherever you may be. Don't ever drink or gamble or keep bad
What those three things have done for me have done for many a man. Well, they got me here in prison on the banks of the old Guyenne. Well, you'll find me in this dirty old place any day you come around. In a large brick building way out on the back of town lies Hatfield is our jailer. He's a true kind-hearted man, but he means to keep his prisoner on the banks of the old Guyenne. Well, they got me here for murder. The case I do deny. To stand a trial on such a crime, I would almost rather die. But they got me in their power, and the trial I'll have to stand. In this dingy town of Logan, on the banks of the old Guyenne. Play one. Last night, while I lay sleeping, I had a pleasant dream. I dreamed I was back at Warncliffe with all the boys again, with Bridget Murphy on my knee and a bottle at my command. But I woke up broken hearted on the banks of the old Guyenne.
It is so hard to say goodbye to Dave Peyton. For those of us used to having lots of words at our command, it's stunning to realize how many of them are so ridiculously inadequate. That poor, tortured word love is so worn thin by overuse and misuse, but forget that for just a moment so we can say this. We loved you, Dave Peyton, and we always will.